acoustics in this place. I don't think I need one, unless you think I
It's
need
up to you. The room has pretty good acoustics, but
Yeah.
it's up to you if you want it or not.
No. However, I can see which one of us has the deepest resonation, baritone voices.
You've got the resonance.
Something to dump the tissue in. Oh well. Stick it there.
Just like old times, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how is life treating you?
I gave up on life treating me any kind of way.
Except any kind of way.
Right. So I switched my thinking. I said, how am I going to treat me? And how am I going to treat life? And
I saw that show you have on TV with your best friend.
trying to write.
Yeah. That was good.
Wow.
I mean, when the show starts affecting the participants.
Yeah, that's that was some realness.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Been there a few times.
Who's your best friend?
A fellow named Michael Valentine. He lives in a place called Murrieta, California. He was in Murrieta.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Murrieta is where they had that standoff between local residents and those kids.
Well, good afternoon.
came over.
Are we at morning still? Good morning, I guess I should say. I am Tara Davis. I'm with the Commission for Blacks here at the University of Tennessee. Our chair, Lily O'Neill, couldn't be with us today, and so I agreed to fill in for her. We just want to thank you all for joining us today. This year is the inaugural year of the Trailblazer Series. The intent of the Trailblazer Series is to highlight the accomplishments of African Americans within the UT community through an annual speaking series. The series kicks off this fall with Mr. Theotis Robinson and Rita Geyer, and will continue through the spring semester with Dr. Mark Dean and Valicia LeKay. You can learn more about the series at trailblazer.utk.edu. The Trailblazer Series is founded and supported by the Commission for Blacks and the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Diversity. A special thanks to the UT System, Office of the President for their sponsorship as well. We are thrilled to introduce Mr. Halloran Hilton Hill as our moderator for our series. Mr. Hill is a talk radio host on News Talk Radio, 98.7 WOKI here in Knoxville, and a television talk host of Anything is Possible on WBIR TV here as well. Mr. Hill also works as a singer, songwriter, author, motivational speaker, and trainer. He wrote Who Would Imagine a King? I'm going to sing it, but along with Mervyn Warren, which was recorded by Whitney Houston for the film The Preacher's Wife, and was included on the film's Grammy-nominated soundtrack. At this point, I would like to welcome Dr. Keith Carver, the Executive Assistant to the UT President, Dr. Pietro, to introduce our speaker for today, Theotis Robinson. Dr. Carver?
Thank you all so much for inviting me to introduce a very good friend, Theotis Robinson, and I'm so honored to be asked to be here and be part of this event today. I've worked closely with Theotis for several years, not just on projects, but close in proximity. Theotis and I shared a wall. If you walk out of Theotis' office and immediately turn to the left, you walk into my office. So through the years, not only working together closely on projects, but just working together closely on the hall, and I could always hear Theotis' insults directly. He didn't have to email or call me with them. He would just shout them out the door. And if you want to hear some great ball jokes, I've heard all of his ball jokes. He'd be happy to share them with you. But we had a lot of fun together and have really enjoyed working with each other. Theotis retired earlier this year, February 1st of 2014, after a great and storied 25-year career as an employee at the university. But as you all know, he wasn't just an employee here and a leader on campus. He is a seminal part of University of Tennessee. In 1961, Theotis and two other students became the first African-American undergraduates admitted to UT. You'll probably hear more about these stories later, but to hear them firsthand from Theotis, they're powerful stories, story of courage, a story of vision, that someone 17, 18 years old would be able to take this on his shoulders and not only challenge university processes, but also state processes and governors and university presidents, and we're grateful that he had the courage to do that. He went on not just with his university work, but in 1970, he was the first African American elected to city council in more than half a century. So certainly blazed a new trail for Knoxville there. Theotis served as the head of economic development for the 1982 World's Fair. So when you think about all the World's Fair and what it accomplished, Theotis was a big part behind the financial package to attract that, but then also in continuing dialogue afterwards. He did such a good job that when he rotated off from that position, the World's Fair subsequently went bankrupt. And I don't know when the last time we've had one, but Theotis perhaps did too good of a job with the World's Fair. At UT, he taught political science. He worked in purchasing. He worked in federal affairs. He's worked in state and local affairs for us, and then served the University of Tennessee as a vice president for Equity University. He did a fantastic job. Theotis was known for his recruiting. He recruited minority vendors, minority businesses to come and do business with the university, but then help the university be much more proactive in going out in their recruitment. So he recruited businesses. He's recruited countless numbers of graduate students and undergraduate students. Or perhaps his most successful recruiting job was when he met Jonida and recruited her to become his wife, and his much, much better half. So we still haven't figured out how Theotis did that, but it was a great, great job. And we're so thankful that Jonida, a great part of his power couple, could be here with us today. Theotis was a charter inductee into the University of Tennessee African American Hall of Fame in 1994. And he was recently named by the Metro as one of the 100 most influential Knoxvillians of the 20th century. And when you think about all the university folks, community folks that we've had working in East Tennessee, on that charter list of 100, it's a real honor for Theotis to be included, and none of us are surprised. In my time working with Theotis, I really value his insight. I had the opportunity to work with Theotis when I worked on the Knoxville campus, but also when I worked in Martin and in Memphis. And Theotis has always been a great mentor, not just with career advice and helping me out in the office, but just become a great friend and advisor to so many, and he's certainly a mentor of mine. Theotis was the first person I ever met who carried a man purse. So he was a trailblazer in the fashion industry as well. Theotis, did you bring it today? Okay, there it is. Oh, there it is. So,
And it's just a purse key.
okay. It's just a purse. But those of you who know Theotis certainly recognize him for his wonderful accomplishments, not only to Knoxville and East Tennessee, but specifically the University of Tennessee. But there are just countless, an infinite number of people he has impacted their lives with his warmth, with his compassion, with his wisdom, and I'm the beneficiary of that, and for that I am forever grateful. And he is certainly worthy of being labeled as a trailblazer. And with that, Theotis, we're so happy to have you. Thank you.
Please do me a favor. Would everybody come and fill up these first few rows? Just as part of making this moment special, if you're closer, it'll create more intimacy in the room. and it'll make the whole experience better. So if you come down, how many of you bathed this morning? You did bathe? Yes, everybody? So we should be good for you to be.
May I ask you a question?
Let's move our chairs up a little bit closer to this. Thank you. Well, the way our format is going to work, I'm first going to interview my friend Theotis, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So thank you for being here today. I fully expect that this is going to be a wonderful time together. And Theotis, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great friend throughout the years. I've known you ever since I got to Knoxville, which next year will be 25 years. So
You haven't been here long.
I haven't been here long enough. We've chased each other from barbershop to barbershop, right? This is the Trailblazer Series, right? And when I was thinking about people who blaze trails, the implication of just that is that there's no trail when you get there. Right, right.
Yes.
You come with a machete, you come with a saw, you come with a shovel. You're making a trail. So you have been counted, and duly so, as a trailblazer. But what I wanted to ask you at the beginning of this interview was this: who were your trailblazers? Because the people that I've run into that have the courage of a trailblazer, the conviction of a trailblazer, typically were around or were mentored by or were educated by people who were trailblazers themselves.
Well, trailblazers in my life start with my parents. I happened to grow up in the South, and back in the sure enough day, segregation and what have you.
Where?
Here in Knoxville. I was actually born in Chattanooga, but my parents moved to Knoxville when I was 2 or 3 years old. And so it's been Knoxville for about 69, 70 years. And so I grew up here. During segregation, during those times, but I also happened to have had 2 parents who were very politically involved and motivated. They voted. And this was back in the time when in many parts of the South, black people could not take for granted that the right under the Constitution to cast a ballot for their whoever was going to head government was theirs to exercise. But my parents did. They were involved, and they supported me in all of these kinds of things. I also grew up in an era when change was coming. The lunch counter sit-ins that went on across the South happened here in Knoxville as well in the summer of 1960, and I'll come back to that. But I drew a lot of inspiration from the sit-in demonstrations. People that I looked up to, I always claimed Jackie Robinson as a cousin. Even though
Right.
I have met him because back in the 50s, early 50s, during the 50s, when the baseball teams went to spring camp and the Dodgers went to Vero Beach, Florida for their spring camp, when the teams traveled north, they could not stay at the Farragut Hotel or the Andrew Johnson Hotel, which were the 2 main hotels in downtown Knoxville, where the rest of the team stayed. They stayed in what were called tourist courts. These were large houses owned by black people that rented rooms and cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the players as they would play their exhibition games here in Knoxville before moving on. And, you know, I can only look back and just shake my head at the number of baseballs that I had signed by people like Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, Larry Doby, Don Newcomb.
And you don't have them now?
No. That's the point.
That's
I
the
do not
point.
have those now.
So Jackie Robinson and your parents were trailblazers for you.
yes.
Which of your parents was the dominant trailblazer? Was there one or the other that you said, or you?
Well, it was even.
It was even.
I remember one Sunday, as a matter of fact, I was just recently talking about this with my wife. This was in the summer of 1960 when the civil rights demonstrations were occurring. And my father, matter of fact, my family owned a restaurant and could have seen lunch counter sit-ins as a threat to their livelihood, but they had greater vision than that. They knew things needed to change. So I talked my dad into going with me down to, I think it was Woolworths, to a lunch counter sit-in. And he had told me that he had problems with this whole concept of nonviolence. But he would do it knowing that it was for the greater good, what have you. He got down there, and there's a local attorney, a fellow named Harry Weirsamer Jr., who was a freshman at UT at the time. And during the sit-ins, the white folk, many of them, I can't say all because there were a number of white people at the lunch counter sitting in with us, but they would target white people who were a part of the demonstration because they viewed them as being traitors.
Correct.
And spit on them, call them names, throw coffee on them, throw cold sodas on them. And my father saw and experienced this happening that day he was down there. And he told me, he said, son, I support what you're doing. I really support what you're doing. What you and your friends and colleagues are doing is just wonderful. But this will be my last time down here. It'll be my first time and my last time, because if somebody comes up and spits on me or says something that they shouldn't say toward me, or heaven forbid they should hit me, nonviolence just went out the window. And there's going to be some sure enough come to Jesus meetings down here on this floor. My mother never went to a demonstration like that. What she did do, we called a demonstration one Sunday where it was a two-pronged demonstration.
Who's we?
This is there was an organization called the Associated Council for Full Citizenship.
Okay.
This was the sponsoring group. It was a sort of a federated organization made up of the NAACP, which had been banned in Tennessee by state law at that point. Various labor unions, different organizations came together and formed this umbrella group to lead the demonstrations. So we, one prong left from Mount Olive Baptist Church and on its way to City Hall. The other prong left Rogers Memorial in Mechanicsville, headed to City Hall. And after we got to City Hall, and on a hot August day, we prayed on the steps to City Hall, which is what Lincoln Memorial University is today.
Right.
That was City Hall. And from there we left and marched to First AME Zion Church at the corner of McCullough and Bertrand, I think. That was the old church. They've torn it down and built a new structure. My mother, not knowing really what to expect, she put on her Sunday best, including heels. Now, I just laid out that pathway, so she got a chance to walk.
To suffer for the cause.
To suffer for the cause. And she was never so happy to get home and trade those heels for some flats or house shoes. But
So-
they were both there.
So you had this parental support for the things that you believe deeply in, and they really did kind of confirm that faith that you had, this desire that you had to see that change.
Well, yes, and there were also teachers. I had a teacher in the 5th grade, the best teacher I ever had, a Mrs. Drake, who was steeped in the Constitution and what it promised all American citizens to be able to vote, to be able, and for her students to rise to any height that they could possibly rise to, because that was part of the American dream, to be able to live out your dreams. And so she taught us about history, about slavery, all these things that somehow have gotten out of our public education curriculum. But she was very much a part of that. There was a song that we used to sing called "We Are Americans Too." And in this song, the lyrics talked about from Bunker Hill to the Rhine, we've been right there in line, we are Americans too, you know, kind of thing. And we were just coming, you know, World War II hadn't been over that long. But she taught patriotism, she taught inclusiveness, that we were a part of this, you know, and don't let anybody dare tell you that you're not.
Was she black or white?
He's not from around here. But no, she was a black woman, but very light complexion woman. But she, boy, she was serious about teaching. Nobody got a social promotion
Right.
in her class. One fella, we graduated in the same class from high school. He spent 3 years in her class in the 5th grade because he didn't get.
So
what he
she was trying to make sure that you had a durable intelligence, one that would stand up to
Yes.
to whatever was before you. So you have these trailblazers for you that taught you, that walked with you, that literally gave you wings, because some parents would have pulled back. They would have said, no, you don't need to do that, right? And your family had a good life. That family had a restaurant. They were educators. You could have stayed ensconced in the black community and lived a good life. There was no need. Was there any pressure or need to be involved in starting to blaze trails of your own?
Well, there were so many things that needed doing. And I'll come back to the Associated Council for Full Citizenship. After we were into the lunch counter sit-ins for about a month, that organization took out an ad in a Sunday edition of the Knoxville News Sentinel, where they listed, about 14, 15 different things that were wrong in Knoxville. They mentioned, for example, that the 3 church-related hospitals, these being Presbyterian or Fort Sanders, St. Mary's or Catholic, and Baptist Hospital, did not accept, quote, Negro patients, unquote, under any circumstances. It didn't matter what kind of emergency may have ensued where a patient would end up at one of those hospitals. They didn't accept black patients. And deaths actually occurred because of that kind of callousness around the whole issue of race. They talked about how the Knoxville Police Department had black cops for a long time, every one of whom held a 4-year baccalaureate degree, but not one held rank above patrolman. Same thing was true in the fire department. And they talked about the public bus system, because then CAT was KTL, Knoxville Transit Lines. And its highest revenue routes were the ones that served East Knoxville, Mechanicsville, Lonsdale. And but no black bus drivers for any of those. And they had several things like that. And they had one piece in there that said that the University of Tennessee, while it accepted graduate students and students to the law school as a result of a 1952 lawsuit that had been filed against UT, they did not accept, quote, Negroes, unquote, in the undergraduate school. So that Sunday night, I sat down at our kitchen table and wrote a letter of application. I did not mention race in the letter anywhere. I didn't mention the high school that I had graduated from because it was an all-black school.
Which was?
Austin High School, never to be confused with Austin East.
Right.
It is Austin High School. But I took that letter, put, of course, my return address on there. Our neighbors on both sides were white. And I lived about 3 blocks from what was then known as East High School. And I lived about 1.5 miles from Austin High School. I got a letter back saying, we're sorry, but we do not accept Negroes in undergraduate school. Well, now that suggests to me that they were monitoring letters, because based on no information about what high school I went to, the fact that we lived with neighbors on both sides being white, how would they know?
Right.
So they were monitoring. Now, I got this letter back and saying, we were sorry, but we don't accept Negroes. And so I wrote a subsequent letter asking for a meeting for my parents and me to meet with the 2 gentlemen who signed this letter. We set up a meeting date and came over to the campus and met with these 2 gentlemen. They were very nice, very polite and all of that, but the answer was that we can't do anything about this. Where we are, one was Dean of Undergraduate Admissions, the other was Dean of Graduate School Admissions. That we want to meet with Dr. Andy Holt, a name that everybody in here is very familiar with. We said yes. I've got this cough, and I have to deal with it. So we asked them, yes, please set up a meeting with Dr. Holt. The president's office at that time was in the Austin P building on the side of the hill going up on the hill. And we came over and met. It was the first time I'd ever seen wood panel walls in an office. That was brand new for me. But he wanted to know why did I want to come to UT. Well, I was born in Tennessee, in Chattanooga. My father had worked here at the university cooking for the training table for the athletes. And those were the men athletes, I might add. And I told him one of the reasons I wanted to come here, I wanted to major in political science. And Knoxville College, where I had a scholarship and had been accepted and what have you, didn't offer political science as a major. They only offered it as a minor, but I wanted to major in it. I would have had to be in the humanities, I would have been in sociology at Knoxville College. And that being born in Tennessee and being a taxpayer in the state of Tennessee, that I had a right to attend the University of Tennessee. Anytime that I bought a candy bar, I was paying taxes into the state. Only a penny or two, but I'm a taxpayer. My parents are taxpayers.
So this is what you're laying out to the president of UT at the time, Andy Holt, and you're how old?
I was 18.
You were talking a little grown.
They got
When Mama used to say, "Are you being mannish, boy?" I mean, and especially given the context.
yes.
How was he receiving this?
Well, it got more mannish and a little bit more before it got better. After I laid out this spiel as to why I should be a student here, he said, well, there was nothing that he could do about it. Only the Board of Trustees could change the policy, and we'd like for him to take the matter to the Board of Trustees. And I told him yes. He said, well, you know, I can't make the change. You'll have to depend on the board. I said, well, I understand that, but you and the board need to understand that if the policy does not change, I plan to sue the university. And so he told me.
So this is you talking, not your parents?
This is me talking.
Dang.
Like I said, it got a little grown.
So you're telling the president of the University of Tennessee, let me in or I'm going to sue you,
Yes,
to which he said,
that he would assign one of his vice presidents, vice president for academic affairs, to put together the case to take to the Board of Trustees as far as a policy change or not. You know, it was their decision to change the policy or not. All he could do was prepare the case, you know, for admissions.
did you believe him to be allowing it to run its course? In other words, we'll put it in front of the board, it'll die there, this spunky kid will run out of steam, we'll move on. Or was he looking for an opportunity to do something he knew eventually he was going to have to do?
Yes. You know, in hindsight, and this is going back through records, predating my application, which happened in 1960. This was in July of 1960 when I sent that letter. Looking through archives, he had been preparing for this at least since 1954, after Brown versus the Board of Education, and things were beginning to happen across the South, period. So he was looking for a case that he could put forth, somebody, you know, who qualified, and to bring about a change. He had consulted over the years with lawyers and former governors at the time, and I remember one newspaper editor from Chattanooga that he really they were friends, and there were communications between them in terms of when this change would happen and how it should be done and all of these kinds of things.
So let me ask you this. You're ready to sue the school to attend the University of Tennessee to study political science.
Mm-hmm.
Did you really want to attend the University of Tennessee? And I know this might seem an odd question. Or did you really want to break the back of segregation at the University of Tennessee?
The latter. The latter. Things were changing across the country, in the Southland, and I felt that the University of Tennessee had a quality program. There was a woman named Dr. Ruth Stevens who taught political science here at UT. And she also had a radio program, because this was at a point in our history when we were making the transition from radio to television. And she had a program where she would lecture about political science. I was an avid listener to that program because I was keenly interested in politics. My first political memory, the one that I can really recall, and I think I have one that was even earlier when I was like maybe 2-3 years old. But I remember sitting up with my mother, listening to election returns in 1948 when Harry Truman defeated Thomas Dewey. And the Chicago Tribune had this big, bold headline that everybody had seen about Dewey defeats Truman. Well, it wasn't true. They just didn't wait long enough to make that call. They didn't have the kind of technology that they have now, when 30 seconds after the election is over, they can tell you who won. They didn't have that. But my political interest stemmed way back.
Way back.
When I was in elementary school, probably junior high, which would today be middle school, I signed up to receive the Congressional Record every day.
Wow. You were that dude. That's okay. That's pretty cool. All right, so I want to follow on this story. We're talking to Theotis Robinson, the first of 4 in our Trailblazer series. Thank you for being here today, by the way. I want to come off topic for just a moment. Ever since I've known you, you've always been this impeccably groomed gentleman, right? And that is.
You hear these groans?
Yeah, I hear. No, but this is But this is fundamental to the Theotis Robinson story, and I've always wanted to ask you where that became, because I knew certain gentlemen, they really believed in dressing well as part of the character statement they were making wherever they went. And I wondered if that was part of that to you.
Well, at a certain point, it became that because, so many things are relative. How well off you are is relative. Within my community, that being the black community, all things considered, we were relatively well off. We discovered that we were poor when they started broadcasting soap operas. And that's when we found out, no, you poor. But I always liked dressing. And as the things that I pursued led toward that, and as time went by, and I've built a wardrobe.
Yes, you have.
Two wardrobes, really, because one, I had a wardrobe that fit a 230-pound man.
Right.
And now I have one that fits a 152-pound man, and there's a big difference.
There's a big difference.
As you know.
I do know. I'm still in the other one. But I had the 300-pound wardrobe.
Okay.
A lot of loose collars. All right, so let's get back to your story. So this goes before the Board of Trustees at the University of Tennessee,
Yes.
that this young man wants to attend the school, that he is basing it on the fact that he's a citizen and a taxpayer, by rights should be allowed into this institution. What happens when it gets to the Board of Trustees?
They brought the state attorney general in for that meeting. They wanted to query him as to whether or not he thought he could win such a lawsuit. And
Were you allowed to be in this meeting?
No.
Okay.
I don't even know that I knew when the meeting was taking place. All the open sessions, kinds of legislation, sunshine laws, all of those kinds of things. This was long before they were ever thought of. But they did, in fact, meet. As I said, they asked the Attorney General, and he assured them that he, given what was going on in the legal world, and in other states, as far as their universities were concerned, public entities, that he didn't think that he could win the case. And so they debated and discussed and did whatever they did, and finally decided to vote whether or not to change the policy, and they voted to change the policy. And so I was admitted. And
How were you notified?
I think I may have gotten a phone call from a reporter, but that's been
Right.
so long ago. I really do not remember.
So you get the word one way or another, and now, were you going to live on campus in a dorm, or were you going to commute?
No, I was going to commute. I don't advise any person who's 18 years old to get married at that age. But when I came to UT at 18, I was married.
Wow.
And so I lived at home with my wife, and coming here to campus just never crossed my mind.
First day on this campus, I guess it was you, and then there were two other students?
Yes, my letter of application started the ball rolling. And when the board acted in November, I think it was November 4th of 1960, it was two other people whom Charles Blair was one. Charles was a year ahead of me in high school, and I had known him forever. Willie Mae Gillespie, who was the third individual, I didn't know her, but they also enrolled and came here to UT.
So first day, do you remember that first day?
Oh, yes. And some things you only become aware of in hindsight.
Right.
But they had, security was in place. It wasn't uniformed. It was people undercover and what have you. if a picture was being taken of all of this, you never would have noticed unless you really were looking for the people who looked out of place, because you're looking basically at 18 to 22-year-olds, and then here's this old dude out here.
He's out of place.
Yeah.
So first day, your first day on campus, you're going to register?
Yes.
So you're signing up, and so you were signing up for your classes. Do you remember what classes you signed up for on that first day?
Some things were required, like 2 years of English, which the dean of College of Liberal Arts had to explain to me why I needed to take English. It's my native language. I've spoken it all my life. You've been through that. So why do I need to take English? That's what I write. That's what I read. That's what I speak. But he explained to me very simply that I could have the most profound thoughts that had been thought in the history of man. But if I couldn't communicate that orally as well as written word, what good was it?
First day of class, what was that like here at the University of Tennessee? You walk into what building, what room, what class?
Well, the first thing that I attended was freshman orientation, and that was in...
Guess who's coming to orientation?
Yeah, guess who's coming to orientation? And that was Dabney Hall on the side of the hill over there. And I'm the only black person in here. Two white guys, because that room was much bigger than this auditorium. These two white guys came in, and I heard one say to the other that I want to be as far away from him as I can possibly be. And they passed behind me, and they ended up on the far side of the room. Now, I didn't just get in town, even at 18, on the tailgate of a turnip truck.
Right.
Coming out of Union County.
Right.
I felt like those comments were probably a result of my presence. But it could have been another guy sitting over here been trying to hit on one of these guys' girlfriends, and they
Right.
wanted to be on the other side of the room.
Right.
I really have no way of proving that thing one way or another. But except for that, there was nothing untoward. Again, as I said, I later learned how much security was around, or surmised, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Here's a question for you. Have you gone back, are there archives and records of the meeting minutes from the Board of Trustees, and have you looked at that stuff?
I have looked at it. And, it was the gentleman who prepared the case, and I'm blanking on his name, Dr. Silverman, I think it was, had done a very good job in preparing how the university's response would be. It probably helped that I was not staying on campus. That didn't happen for another 3 or 4 years when students stayed on campus. And that was very difficult. It was 2 male students, one of whom rose to the rank of general in the Tennessee Air National Guard. I can't recall his name. And then I remember when the first female did this. So the first female was named to the cheerleaders. And that was a traumatic experience for her, living here on campus and living in a dormitory.
Here's another question for you. So you had been accepted to Knoxville College.
Correct.
Throughout the United States of America, there was a good network of historically black colleges and universities that were doing a premier job of educating and training the leaders of this nation. I mean, premier. They were. And Knoxville College, for a season, was one of those institutions. Was there any internal community pressure? Was there any kind of a reaction? Was there any backlash to you going to the University of Tennessee as opposed to going to Knoxville College? Or was the community reaction more of, he's the first to do this, we support him, this is someone around whom we need to rally? Was there any dynamic tension around not going to Knoxville College? Because ultimately, as colleges and universities began to desegregate, we saw historically black colleges and universities start to kind of fold up, suffer. Yeah.
And no.
Later,
there was that kind of reverse thinking that took hold, that somehow you need to support HBCUs, and that's where you need to go. But to me, I looked at that whole thing. If it hadn't been for people breaking down those doors, then folk who are saying that no, you need to support the HBCU system and go there as a student would have been tearing down the walls at these historically white institutions. And so that was that kind of internal conflict with some students. There's a place for both.
Right.
There's a place.
So you get to the University of Tennessee, you're going to school, talk about your tenure at UT as a student, and then did you ever run into people that had called you names at the lunch counter, or did you ever run into people who had acted out towards you later in your life?
Well, let me tackle the first part of that. The people that I encountered at lunch counter sit-ins, theater stand-ins, those kinds of marches, those kind of things, would not have been students here anyway.
Okay.
So
right, I got you.
Dismiss them. They weren't here. Or certainly not as students. There may have been some jobs that they might have had, but no. And other than that, not really. You know, one of the it was really unique. There's some things that are unique in the course of a movement like the Civil Rights Movement. When the theater stand-in demonstrations started, and these were seen as being a little bit dangerous because these were at night.
Right.
And you're going down here in downtown Knoxville, and you know that you're not wanted to be doing what you're doing. And this one particular night, we were in front of the Tennessee Theater, and the way it worked, a line would form and go up to the ticket window, and a person would ask for a ticket. The person would say, well, no, we don't sell tickets to Negroes. And they'd move on, and a white person who was supporting them would be in line and say, when she asked for next, no, this person was here before I was, you know, and you do that kind of thing and worked it around. And John Duncan, who was mayor at the time, the congressman's father who preceded him into the family business in Congress. At any rate, there was these cops were around, and they all had on their name tags, and we would always look to see just who somebody was named. You know, here's Officer Hill, and we'd sing freedom songs. Officer Hill loves freedom. Officer Hill loves freedom. Officer Hill loves freedom. Freedom, freedom. Those guys would get so red. I mean, they wanted to do one of them Alabama whoopings upside some of our heads down there, except for this one officer, Officer Scruggs. He broke out in the biggest old redneck grin that you ever wanted to see, and we started singing about Officer Scruggs. Until this white kid, and I'm going to guess he was probably like 17, 18, 19 years old, he came up and started calling us a bunch of names. that were unflattering. And that's when Officer Scruggs' jaws got tight. He grabbed that kid and rushed him around the corner onto Clinch Avenue there. And about 5 minutes later, they came back from around the corner, and this young fella had blood dripping down from the corner of his mouth. He had blood coming down from his nose. Officer Scruggs took him around the corner and tuned him up. And that was just unimaginable.
In that day.
In that day. That was unimaginable. And so I did encounter him later. I had mentioned that the police department had black cops and people in the fire department that had not been promoted even though they had 4-year college degrees. When I got on the city council, no longer was I in a position that I'd always been, where I'm on the outside trying to convince somebody on the inside to do something that's right. I was on the inside, and I used that. And I got a number of people promoted in both the police and fire departments. And I tried to get Scruggs promoted, but he had been such a thorn in the sides of people in the police department because he didn't go along
With
that
what they were
racist
doing.
stuff.
So
And so I couldn't get him promoted, but I got his son promoted.
why don't we pick up here then? Because you mentioned city council. How long were you at the University of Tennessee, and then when did you decide to run for city council?
I decided to run for city council on election night, 1968.
So this is
because-
7 years later. So if 61 was the year you...
61 that I came here. Yeah, yes, as a matter of fact, I was in my mid-20s when
Right.
I first ran. I first ran for the state legislature, and which was interesting because I was running in the Democratic primary, and my two opponents were both white. And everybody in a district that was about 3/4 white. And everybody assumed that I would not win. I mean, one of my opponents, I came home one day from work, and he had his ugly mug on trees and telephone poles all the way up and down the street that I lived on. And I was tired, and then I was hurt when I saw that. And then he shows up on my doorstep, wanting me
To support him?
To support him. He dropped out of the race. This other guy who is running, you know what he is. At least, I'm supportive of you and your community and what have you. Well, that really made me angry. I told him that if he wanted black votes, the best thing he could do was get out here and work for him, because I wasn't writing off. I'm not conceding any white vote to you.
You said any blank vote?
Any
Yeah, I
no.
got you.
But the following evening, when he went home, my signs were all up and down on the street where he lived, and I went on to win the primary, which it took him a long time to get over and forgive me for beating him in an election. Well, I lost on election night,
Right.
but we decided then there was a ballot measure, a city charter amendment that would change the system by which we elected city council members and Board of Education members. And we decided that night that I would run for city council a year later. And I was elected in November of '69, took office January 1st of 1970.
So once again, you're doing something that, in this instance, hasn't been done in a very long time.
No,
Like,
over half a century.
wow. And so here you are doing this all over again. Did you want to be a city councilman, or did you want to break that system open? Was this a trailblazing event, or was this, no, this is what I want to do?
Well, it was both.
Well,
It was both. Because, as I mentioned earlier, I had learned that it's one thing to be on the outside, looking in, and trying to get somebody on the inside to do something that they ought to do. It's a much better position to be on the inside where you can do it. And so that's what I did. I was on the inside.
What kind of city councilman were you?
In my opinion,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that comment.
Somebody said you were a hellraiser.
I found I was not articulate. I guess it may say something when the Jewish community amongst themselves label you as a race man. That's deep.
And why did they label you that way?
Oh, hey, that's what I fought for. I fought for my community in every way that I could. And I had plenty of opportunities because we had been out in the desert for more than half a century. So there was a real pent-up demand for action across a range of things, city contracts, promotions of people who work for the city, services.
Part of, though, being on a city council has to do with being able to convince, depending on the makeup of the body, you can be a hellraiser, but you still have got to find 5 other people or 6 other people or however many other people to vote for changes to happen. So can you be a hellraiser without being a hell of a salesman?
Well, you temper your hell raising. That's a card you play when you need to play that card. Unless you need to play that card, you keep it in your pocket. It was also helped by the dynamics of city politics. There was a man who served on the Knoxville City Council, and I don't think you were here in time to know him, but I know you have heard of him, and that was Cass Walker. And some folk in here knew Cass and know.
Super derm for your itchy bottom.
Oh Lord, he was a piece of work. He was one of the original John Birchers. So just that'll serve as descriptive enough. But the council was split. You had Cass Walker, and he had 3 colleagues who followed his lead on whatever it happened to be. And you had, which constituted 4. And then you had 4 council members who supported the mayor. And then you had me. And that was my position for 2 years, where I was the
tie-breaking vote.
Yes.
And you used it
I
with
used
great facility.
Yes, sir. I got a lot done.
So give me maybe 1 or 2 things that you did while on council when you look back on it that you recognize as trailblazing moments and you say, I'm glad I got that done. That's significant to me.
The first thing, and I'm going back to something I've said previously, that the police department and the fire department had black officers, but they didn't have rank, they didn't have status. The first order of business, they've since changed the charter, so it doesn't work this way now. But when I went on, the first order of business was to pass a budget. You take office on January 1, on New Year's Day, literally, and by the end of the month, you pass the budget. Well, one of the first things I faced the previous year, the year before I got on city council, the city council had passed a budget that the mayor opposed, which provided for pay raises for uniform bodies throughout our system. The mayor had told them, if you pass this budget, we're going to run a deficit by the end of this calendar year. Cass Walker told him, no, we've got the money, you just don't want to spend it on them. We're passing this budget. And the constraints that the mayor had on him by charter, it was set in the charter, you could only raise the tax rate to a certain level. Anything above that was going to be to pay off a deficit from the previous year. Well, guess what? The city ran a deficit for the budget that I didn't have a vote on. And it called for the mayor wanting to pass a nickel on the tax rate in order to wipe out that deficit that had been created in the previous year. The first time it came up, Kaz Walker was in the hospital, and it came down to a 4-4 tie. Pardon me. In the case of a tie like that, the mayor can vote. And so he voted, and that broke the tie. It passed on first reading, 5-4. And of course, that meant it also had to come back for a second reading. Kaz Walker put out a statement that if they had to roll him into the city council chambers, he'd be there to defeat this tax increase. The mayor knew that his only possibility of passing this budget was to get me to vote for it. And so he dispatched another member of city council that he knew had good relations with me, wanted to know what would it take for me to change my vote. And I told him. He took it back to the mayor, and within that same week, we had a meeting, cut the deal, and I changed my vote with a explanation to it that, you know, I know what I said the first time around, that I didn't see why I should be asked to vote for tax increase to wipe out a deficit that I had no role in creating. But being a member of city council and having a look at the broader picture, our city must go forward in education, it must go forward in recreation, it must go forward in providing services, and being true to my role as a member of city council, I feel compelled that I have to vote for this. Georgiana Vines approached me when the meeting was over because she had heard what was going on. I cut a deal that was going to give promotions to a bunch of people in the fire department and the police department. Oh, no, I did that vote because duty demands that I did that vote. The mayor promoted about 10 people 2 days later in the police department and in the fire department. And, you know, for the 2 years, it was consistent like that.
Wow. We're talking to Theotis Robinson today. We're talking about his time on city council. He was one of the first black students at the University of Tennessee in 1961, served on city council, but then you came to work for the University of Tennessee. When did you come to the University of Tennessee? And that had to be a real moment for you.
Well, that was in 1989, I think. 80. Oh, I stand corrected. 89. Well, that's what I said. Okay. I came to work here in January, I think it was, of 1989, and I was working as a in the purchasing department, and worked there for a couple of years up until Joe Johnson retired the first time. And I had moved up from purchasing department by then anyway. I was working in government relations and working with state legislature and things like that, a whole lot of community kind of stuff. When Wade Gilley was appointed as president, he expanded my role and basically created a new role coordinating diversity kinds of measures within the system, the UT system. And just not many months, but a few months after, named me as Vice President for Equity and Diversity. And that was the moment when, he's talking about the Board of Trustees had to approve this.
Wow.
And it was 40 years after they had changed the policy that allowed me to come to the university as an undergraduate student. And so over that 40 years, I'd come from, can I get in, to
Being a vice president.
being a
Isn't that
vice
incredible? That's pretty incredible. What's our time like right now? Are we out of time? We're over time? I thought we were going to 1 o'clock. I am so sorry. I'm just sitting here chopping it up with the... Theotis, I want to thank you so much for being a trailblazer. These conversations are really important so that you would know the history. When you see students on this campus now,
Oh, yes.
that has to be...
Yes. Yes.
Can we take 2 minutes and hear what he has to say about students that he sees on campus now? Wouldn't that be informative?
I look at them as people who followed, maybe in some footsteps that I had something to do with here. And some of them, especially still at this stage of the game, because their stay here is typically about 4-5 years. There are some efforts to cut that time down to 3.5 years. You don't have them staying 8 years. That doesn't happen anymore. But some, know from the things, the celebration that we had like 3 or 4 years ago now, and recognize me and know. Some will walk right past you.
Have no idea.
And have no idea, and they're not conscious of speaking anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Are any of you current students at the University of Tennessee? So would you look at them and give them just one word of advice?
Study. The social stuff will take care of itself after you leave here and have a well-paying job. You'll have plenty of time for the socials. Of course, that works for some of the employees too.
Why don't we give a warm round of applause to Theotis Robinson, a true trailblazer. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Wow, a lifetime, a trailblazer in just an hour. Obviously, it's not enough time to really
Dang.
get in.